It's been a hell of an experience.
You've had such a storied career in movie making. Where is this gonna sit for you in terms of the memories, the experience of again?
Like nothing else. Like I don't know where I go from here.
Why F1 the movie is not just another racing movie. Sometimes the movie doesn't just play in theaters, it lives there for weeks, for months, long after its release. What makes F1 different is the heart, and at its very core is the oldest, simplest and the most powerful story there is, the story of the underdog.
You're goddamn right.
It's not just a story of Sonny Hayes, it's about Ruben, it's about Pierce, it's about Kate and even about the girl in the pit crew who refuses to quit. Every character has something to lose. Every one of them has everything to fight for. That's why F1 hits harder than a checkered flag moment. Because it's not just about racing to win, it's about fighting when the world says you can't.
I think it's really wonderful that Apex are giving second chances to the elderly.
In this video, we'll unpack the layers of its triumph and explore why this film resonated so profoundly with the audience. Here is the answer to the question, why the F1 movie became a success. The world of F1, the spectacle that feels real. The beauty of the F1 movie is that you don't need to know anything about Formula 1 to fall in love with it. You don't have to understand what a formation lap is. You don't have to know which flag means slow down or that DNF means did not finish. None of that matters because the film cuts through the jargon and technicalities, delivering something primal. At the end of the day, all of us understand what a race is. A start, a finish line. Competitors are risking everything to get there first. The rules, the acronyms, the strategies, they all fade into the background. What you feel is pure simplicity. Who will cross first? Who will survive the chaos long enough to do it? Because while the details of F1 racing appeal to the insiders, the thrill of a contest is universal, and that's what Kosinski delivered. He gave us a way in. He didn't put us in the stands to politely spectate. He trapped us into the cockpit, bolted us inches from the tarmac, and shoved our faces into the G-force. Simply put, he put us in danger. It's the exact philosophy he brought to Top Gun Maverick. Nobody in the theater needed to know what an aileron roll was or how thrust-to-weight ratios worked in a jet fight. But every person who sat there felt their stomach drop when Tom Cruise pulled 9 Gs. F1 works the same way. You don't know downforce, but you feel it pushing the car into the track. You don't know chassis flex, but you gasp when those tires flirt with danger. Every shot screams realism. Practical rigs mounted on real cars. IMAX lenses that make grandstand towers look like cliffs. Tight shots inside helmets where breath fogs up visors and sweat drips into eyes. The pure fury of a combustion engine detonating over and over again. That's immersion. That's a spectacle not as fireworks but as a physical sensation. And that's why it all feels so powerful.
Impressive. Oh yeah.
Because film doesn't ask you to study racing. It asks you to experience it, to grip the seat, to hold your breath, to sweat through the curves and to feel it, just for a moment, what it means to be inside that world so you can walk out with a feeling that you lived that race yourself. But a race without a story is hollow, and that is where F1 managed to separate itself from being just another racing movie. The characters behind the helmets. Brad Pitt's Sonny Hayes is our way in. The older driver who by all odds shouldn't be here anymore. His body aches, his reputation is frayed, he's past the age where people stop taking risks. Yet, here he is, back in the seat, fighting for one last chance. But unlike other sports films that reduce everything to just one chosen hero, F1 gives us a team. There's Ruben, who has his whole company on the line. There's Pierce, the rival too proud to accept anything less than total dominance. A man driven not by love but by ego and yet whose pride makes him captivating. There's Kate, relentless and sharp, carving out her place in a paddock that has never made room for her. Even the unnamed pit crew members, men and women who in most films would exist only as brief background shots, are given glances, choices and small arcs that remind us 2 seconds at the pit wall can make or break glory. And this is where F1 becomes part of a greater tradition. Think of Rush, Ron Howard's film about Hunt and Lauda. People didn't walk away, they were only talking about lap times. They talked about rivalry, about obsession, about how two men could both need and hate each other in the same breath. Or take Ford v Ferrari. On the surface, it was about building a faster car. But the reason people wept watching Christian Bale and Matt Damon wasn't horsepower. It was a sacrifice. friendship, and legacy. F1 stands shoulder to shoulder with those films because it remembers the same principle. Spectacle without character is empty. It's lights and noise with no heartbeat underneath. But when you place people, flawed, bruised, desperate people inside that spectacle, suddenly every turn of the wheel becomes destiny. By the time the race reaches its final lap, audiences aren't cheering for an engine or a machine, they are cheering for the people who built it, who fought for it, who cried for it, and they are cheering in some way for themselves. Because what we see reflected on screen is not just racing, it's a struggle, it's survival, it's the need inside all of us to prove we still can win, even when the world is stacked against us. Caring about the characters isn't enough. A film still has to make us feel their fight. That's where sound, music, and cinematography take over. The language of speed, sound, music, and cinematography. If the characters give the story its heart, then these elements give it its pulse. The racing in F1 doesn't just look fast, it feels fast, and that feeling is born out of choices. The way the film is shot, the way it is scored, the way every engine note is captured like a scream of defiance. Let's start with the sound. Real F1 cars carry a violence that television mics can never capture. The deep growl, the metallic shriek as revs tear through the air. The film doesn't polish those sounds, it unleashes them. The score doesn't sit on top of the noise, it weaves into it. Strings tighten and release like nerves in driver's hand. And then the score vanishes, leaving only the raw agony of the rubber against asphalt as the car strains to hold the line. Silence matters here. Silence amplifies the fear. Joseph Kosinski didn't shoot this movie like a sports highlight. He shot it like a combat. Cameras are strapped inside cockpits, shuttling inches from the tarmac, tilting with the driver's every twitch. Wide IMAX frames swallow the screen, so when a car whips past at 200 miles per hour, it doesn't feel like cinema, it feels like survival. It's the same pursuit of immersion that made Top Gun Maverick an unforgettable experience. Only this time, the battlefield is concrete. Together, the images and the sound build a rhythm. Lap to lap, corner to corner, the film plays like music. Every close-up of Sonny Hayes bracing himself, every cut to the pit crew, frozen into a 2-second eternity, every crash that erupts is not a spectacle, but a gut punch. The cinematography and the sound design are playing the same song of danger, of speed, of stakes higher than life itself. This spectacle made the race look real. The characters gave it heart, but sound, music, and cinematography gave F1 its soul. The raw, sensory experience that left audiences shaken, breathless, and desperate to feel it again. Word of mouth, the strongest publicity. Movies don't survive on adrenaline alone. Blockbusters arrive, dominate a weekend, and vanish. We have seen it over and over again. But F1 didn't vanish. Weeks later, screenings were still packed. Months later, people were still buying tickets. And the reason wasn't marketing. It wasn't a trailer. It wasn't even a criticism. It was word of mouth. The most ancient, most unstoppable publicity there is. You can't buy word of mouth. You can't fake it. You have to earn it. One ticket at a time, one audience gasping at the finish line and walking out of the theater saying to their friend, "You have to see this, not on your couch, but in a theater. You have to feel it."
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
And think about it. This is how the greatest sports films survive. Nobody rewatches Rocky because of its box office numbers. They rewatch it because someone once told them, "Trust me, you will feel something." Nobody recommends Ford v Ferrari by recounting lap times. They recommend it by saying, "It made me cry about cars." Word of mouth is the kind of publicity no billboard can buy. Because when a friend tells you to watch it, you trust them more than a critic, more than any ad. And for F1, that cycle kept growing. Audiences made the movie a ritual, one worth repeating. And conversations spread like wildfire across social media, not just talking about the spectacle, but about the underdog story. That's why F1 became more than a movie. It became an event, the type of film that outlasts a release calendar and refuses to vanish into streaming lineups. The type of film that people insisted you see on a giant screen with sound rattling your bones. Because in the end, every poster, every trailer, every studio push is temporary. But the echo of someone leaving a cinema and whispering, "You have to see this," that lives forever. That was the fuel behind F1's success. Not marketing, not algorithms, just people talking. Star power and vision. Brad Pitt is more than a movie star. He's one of those rare actors who can carry the weight of both blockbuster spectacle and intimate drama. Audiences trust him because for decades, he has proven himself not afraid to take risks. He can swing between Fight Club and Moneyball, from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to Bullet Train. In F1, that experience comes to life in Sonny Hayes. You believe him to be weary, grizzled veteran because Pitt himself carries decades of stardom on his shoulders. Every crease on his face, every flicker of doubt in his eyes, every exhausted smile. It tells a story of someone who's fought too many battles, lost as many as he has won, but still finds the courage to step on the gas one more time. That kind of authenticity can't be cast on paper. It comes from the gravity of the performer. And with Pitt, you don't just get a character, you get a presence. But even great actors need vision, and that's where Joseph Kosinski comes in. If Top Gun Maverick was his proof of concept, F1 was his encore. Kosinski isn't a director obsessed with flashy CGI. He's obsessed with reality, immersive, physical reality that you can feel. In Maverick, that meant strapping IMAX cameras into actual fighter jets.
IMAX quality cameras inside the cockpit with the actors.
Verify cameras are on. Check cameras on. There you go.
In F1, it meant collaborating with real Formula One teams, engineering custom rigs to bolt cameras on cars, and shooting footage that made racing feel like war at 200 miles per hour.
We ended up getting 25 bespoke cameras from them. We used every single one of them.
And Kosinski understands something many modern directors forget. Technology is just a tool. What matters is emotion. He doesn't give us spectacles to impress us. He gives us spectacle to move us. It's not simply to say, look how fast this is. It's to make us feel the fragility of control, the razor's edge between triumph and disaster. Today, Pitt and Kosinski gave F1 its anchor. One grounded it with humanity, the other elevated it into pure cinema. Star power drew us in, vision carried us through, and that combination is why people felt safe putting their trust and their ticket money into F1. And so it all circles back, not to cameras or sound or marketing, but the story. Why the underdog story still wins. Strip away the IMAX screens, strip away the music, the thunder, the adrenaline. At its core, F1 is about the oldest, simplest narrative in the world, the underdog. The team nobody believed in. The driver is past his prime, the crew is fighting for scraps against giants, and yet together they find a way. Not because odds were suddenly in their favor, but because they chose to fight anyway. That's what audiences connected with. That's why strangers in theaters cheered like it was a real race. Because deep down, the underdog story belongs to all of us. Every person has felt underestimated. Every person has walked into something with the world stacked against them. And every person has dreamed, if only for a moment, of proving everyone wrong. The underdog story is universal. It was there in Rocky, it was there in Rudy, it was there in Cool Runnings, and now it lives inside F1. That's why this movie didn't fade away like another summer spectacle.
What's happening? He's flying. Sonny, you did it! We won!
So F1 wasn't just a movie about racing. It wasn't just about cars, laps, or checkered flags. It was about resilience, about grit, about staring down a finish line, the world soar you would never reach, and crossing it anyway. That's not a racing story, that's a human story. Which is why long after the credits rolled, people couldn't stop talking about it, and why they will keep talking about it for years. If you found this video insightful and are interested in watching more, check out our video on Christopher Nolan's Odyssey right here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.